My name's Jessica. I'm 35, single, and apparently the only person in my entire extended family who knows how to plan anything without it descending into absolute chaos. That's not me bragging, by the way. That's just how it's been since I was old enough to hold a clipboard and talk into a phone without sounding like a cartoon character. So, naturally, when someone in our sprawling, bickering clan suggests a family reunion, I'm the one who ends up doing all the heavy lifting. This time was no different. It started with a group text. My Aunt Charlotte posted something like, "We haven't all been together in ages. Let's do something big this summer." Cue the flood of excited messages. Dozens of cousins, uncles, and in-laws chiming in, throwing around dates and locations like they were planning a royal wedding. And then someone said it, "Jessica, you're so organized. You should take the lead again." That was back in March. The reunion was set for late July. I didn't complain, not out loud. I'd done it before, and if I'm being honest, part of me actually enjoyed it. I like the orderliness of it, the satisfaction of turning a mess of ideas into a real event. Plus, a small part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time they'd appreciate the effort. Spoiler, they didn't. I spent weeks researching venues that could handle over 70 people, combing through menus, comparing rates, negotiating with vendors, creating custom invites, the whole 9 yards. When we couldn't lock in the deposit fast enough, I fronted the money myself. $3,500 for the venue, another $2,000 to hold the catering and smaller bits here and there, decorations, custom shirts, some activities for the kids. Altogether, I was floating close to $7,000. I figured I'd get paid back. Not all at once, but gradually. I'd set up a shared spreadsheet, added Venmo and Zelle links, and even included itemized breakdowns for transparency. I was nothing if not thorough. The cracks started to show around mid-June. That's when people began dropping off the group chat. First, a cousin here, then an uncle there. Aunt Charlotte suddenly had church stuff and might be late. My sister Irene went radio silent. No explanations, no questions, just a slow drift away. And the payments, maybe 10% of what I was owed, came in. I followed up nicely at first, then with a little more urgency. Nothing aggressive, just polite nudges. I got hit with excuses. "Oh, I thought I sent it," or "We're tight this month, but I'll get it to you before the event." My cousin Ethan had the nerve to say, "You make more than most of us anyway, right? This shouldn't be a big deal." Still, I kept going. I was too deep into it to back out now. The week of the event, I confirmed everything with the venue and the caterers. I sent out final reminders, directions, and a schedule. I even called the balloon arch guy twice because I didn't trust him to show up on time. The night before the reunion, I packed my car, printed out the itinerary, and double-checked my reservation numbers. Everything was ready. I texted the group chat. "See you all tomorrow." So excited. Not a single response. That should have been my first clue. The next morning, I got up early and headed to the venue. I was nervous, but in the good way, you know. Like before a big presentation. I pulled into the lot and my stomach dropped. The lot was full. Cars everywhere. I barely found a spot. I walked into the hall. It was packed. My family was already there, eating, laughing, music playing, tables set, decorations up, catering in full swing. But I hadn't done any of that. And I hadn't been invited. I stood frozen in the doorway for what felt like an hour, but it was maybe 30 seconds. Then Aunt Charlotte spotted me. Her face turned this strange shade of pale pink, and she came over, arms wide and fake smile plastered on. "Jessica, hey, I didn't think you were coming after all." I blinked. "What are you talking about? I planned this." She laughed nervously and leaned in like we were gossiping. "Well, you seemed so stressed. The group thought it'd be better to just take over. Give you a break." I couldn't speak. Not right away. I looked around. My mom was there. My sister Irene, my cousin Ethan, the one who said I make more than him. Everyone was there. Everyone who had bailed on messages, ignored my payment reminders, ghosted me for weeks. They planned around me, behind me. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just said, "I see," and walked out. No one followed. I sat in my car trying to make sense of it. I was hurt, sure, but mostly I felt used. Like they took my planning, my contacts, my groundwork, and once it was all set, they decided I wasn't needed anymore. Worse, they didn't even tell me. They hijacked the whole thing and pretended like I was never part of it. I drove home. I didn't cry. I just sat on my couch, numb, phone face down on the table. The group chat lit up that night with photos, smiling faces, kids with balloon animals, cheesy captions like, "So grateful for family and best reunion ever." I didn't say a word. Then, 2 days later, I got an alert from my credit card company. A $10,248 charge labeled Event Catering Final Payment. I stared at it, heart sinking. I called the bank immediately. Yes, ma'am, the rep said after a brief hold. The catering company processed this charge based on a prior authorization. It appears the card was swiped manually. I hadn't authorized it. Not that charge. I'd only paid the deposit with the agreement that the remaining balance would be settled the day of the event by someone from the family. Apparently, they decided to skip that part and use my card again. Without telling me that, I froze the card and filed a claim. I told them the full story. The rep was polite, even sympathetic. She said the catering company would likely be contacted for documentation and an investigation would follow. She paused. Would you like the charge flagged as potential fraud? I didn't hesitate. Yes. 2 days later, I got a call from the catering company. The manager, a guy named Leonard, was clearly agitated. Miss Parker, I just need to confirm. You're saying you didn't authorize the final charge? That's right. Well, he exhaled. That's a problem because we already provided the full service, and the person who gave us your card swore it was fine. Who was it? I asked. I can't say until the claim is processed officially, he replied. But let's just say it's someone who should have known better. I could hear the edge in his voice. He wasn't just worried. He was furious. And that's when the real party started. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating off the nightstand. I fumbled for it, half asleep, only to see 6 missed calls from my mom and a couple of texts from Irene. I didn't even open them. At first. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to process what the day might bring. But then I got a call from an unknown number, and I picked up without thinking. Jessica Parker, a stern voice asked. Speaking. This is Officer Grayson with the city's Financial Crimes Unit. We're following up on a potential case of credit card fraud reported by both your bank and a local business, Catering Collective. I'd like to schedule a time to get your statement in person. I sat up. Wait, this is a criminal case now. We've received a formal complaint from the vendor. He said they provided video evidence, signatures, and correspondence. Since you've already filed a claim on the charge, we need to confirm your side before proceeding further. I scheduled the meeting for that afternoon. A few hours later, I met with Officer Grayson. He was polite and professional, listening carefully as I explained everything from start to finish. I showed him the shared spreadsheet, the payment reminders I'd sent, and the final message thread where no one responded to my text about being excited for the event. After a long pause, he nodded. This is an active investigation. We'll be in touch soon. When the meeting was over, I returned to my apartment, still numb. I didn't feel triumphant. It was all too messy, too complicated. But one thing was clear now. I wasn't just being ignored or taken for granted anymore. The situation had escalated to something beyond family drama. That night, I received a call from the catering company again. Leonard's voice was cooler. Now, almost clipped. Just wanted you to know, Ms. Parker, we've been advised to pursue full restitution from the individual who gave us the card. We've sent an invoice. They didn't respond. So, we're filing in small claims and moving forward with a fraud complaint. I didn't say much, just I understand. He hesitated before hanging up. They signed your name on the receipt, you know. Sloppily, but still. The next few days were filled with calls, messages, and emails. It felt like the world was closing in on me. The family was in full panic mode, trying to fix things on their terms. Aunt Charlotte, my mom, Jared, all of them wanted to resolve it quietly. They didn't want anyone to know the truth. The group chat exploded. Messages were coming in non-stop. Cheryl, we need a family meeting. Jared, who told the caterers I had access to the card. Hannah, it wasn't me, I didn't even talk to them. My mom's messages were the most desperate. I thought this was handled. Cheryl said it was covered. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't about them thinking I'd overreacted to a simple mistake. It was about respect, about them thinking they could use me and then pretend like nothing had happened. I was the one who was always there, always stepping in to fix things, to help. And when I wasn't convenient, they just swept me aside. I quietly left the group chat. I didn't say a word, but I made one more call. This time to my lawyer, Michael. Michael's a longtime friend who's handled some real estate stuff for me before. When I explained the situation, he was quiet for a long time. You're telling me they planned an event using your name, your deposits, your credit card, then excluded you. And now they're panicking because you didn't just eat 10 grand like a good little ATM? Exactly. He exhaled hard. I can draft something, a letter of liability release, reimbursement demand, cease and desist for unauthorized use of your personal data. Do you want to press it further? Not yet, I said. Let's see how this plays out. 2 days later, Michael. Sent the letter. Not from me, but from his office, with firm legal language and bold formatting. It was addressed to Cheryl, my mom, Irene, and Jared. The moment it was delivered, my phone exploded with calls. Voicemails came in. My mom sobbed on hers. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. Cheryl's voice was cold. "You're ruining the family over something we could have talked through." Jared's voicemail was sharp. "Hope you enjoy watching your own family implode." Then came the email from Aunt Charlotte. The subject line was one word: please. The body of the email dripped with forced humility. She tried to play the family card again, asking me to drop everything, to meet in person. And resolve things quietly, just the two of us and Jared. No more lawyers. No more fighting. I stared at it for a long time. The audacity was breathtaking. "Don't destroy the peace," she wrote. As if I was the one who had stolen someone's identity to throw a party, then ghosted them, but I wasn't. The problem. They were. And that's when I realized how far I'd come from the person who always kept the peace. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. I haven't responded to Cheryl. Instead, I started to move on. I booked a solo vacation to Iceland, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. Alone on a black sand beach, under the northern lights, I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. No one needed anything from me. When I came back, I posted one photo. Just me, smiling at the wind, the waves crashing behind me. The caption: "The best reunion I've ever attended." I didn't check the reactions. I didn't need to. A few months later, I ran into Irene at dinner. We talked. Like we used to before everything got messy. She told me she was slowly cutting ties with most of the family too. "They're still pretending nothing happened," she said, "like it all just blew over." "Let them," I said. "You really aren't going back?" "No," she replied simply. "And I don't think they believe that yet. But they will." And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The weeks after the Iceland trip were peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. I'd focused on my work, my life, and had found new hobbies I didn't have time for before. But even as I enjoyed the calm, there were moments when the silence felt too heavy, too isolating. I didn't check the family group chat anymore. I muted it, just to avoid the constant barrage of messages. But I knew what was going on. They had probably carried on pretending everything was fine, like nothing had ever happened. Their fake smiles and pleasant talk of family vacations, birthdays, and gatherings, it was all an act. They couldn't undo what they'd done. And as much as I'd stopped caring about their approval, a small part of me wondered if they would ever realize what they had lost. It wasn't until a month later that I heard from my mom again. She called me one evening, her voice low and soft. "Jessica, can we talk?" I sighed, unsure of what to expect. "What's going on, Mom?" She hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking about everything, what happened with the reunion, with the credit card, the way things spiraled. I just wanted to apologize." I sat back on my couch, surprised. "What do you mean? You should have apologized a long time ago." "I know," she said quietly. "I should have. But I didn't understand how far it had gone until now. I've talked to your aunt, and Jared, they all wanted to fix it, but I don't know, Jessica. I was wrong. And I'm sorry." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of all the pain they caused, but I kept my cool. I had done the work to move on, and I didn't need them to validate my feelings anymore. "I appreciate the apology, Mom," I said after a pause. "But I'm not going to forgive all of you just because you suddenly feel guilty. I'm done, you know? I can't keep putting myself through this." She was silent for a moment. "I understand. But I hope one day we can fix things." "I don't know," I replied, my voice steady. "Maybe. But I'm not holding my breath." The next day, my phone lit up with messages from the family. Jared sent a long text, apologizing for everything, claiming that he had been pressured into using my card and that it was never meant to go this far. Aunt Cheryl also sent a message, but it was more of a "we should move on" kind of message, filled with thinly veiled blame. I ignored them. The apology felt hollow, especially after everything that had happened. They still didn't get it, then. A few weeks later, I got an email from Michael, my lawyer. Attached was a settlement agreement from the catering company. They had finalized the case, and Cheryl and Jared were being held financially accountable for the remaining charges. The letter included a goodwill gesture. They'd agreed to pay me back the full amount, plus a bit extra as compensation for the emotional distress. I didn't care about the money anymore. What mattered was that they were finally facing the consequences. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. I didn't respond to the email immediately. I just let it sit in my inbox for a few days, reflecting on how much I'd grown. There was a time when I would have fought to the bitter end for my family's approval, even if it meant losing myself in the process. But now, I didn't need that validation. I had learned to let go. To stand my ground. To walk away when I needed to. The next family event came around, a birthday party for one of my cousins. I didn't go. The family sent a few invitations, but I ignored them all. I wasn't going to put myself back in that toxic environment, but one day, I received a message from Irene. Mom says you're not coming to the party. Why don't you come anyway? Just for a little bit. You don't have to forgive everyone, but we miss you. I thought about it for a moment. Maybe one day, I typed back. But not today. I realized that I didn't have to explain myself anymore. They'd made their choices, and I had made mine. It was time for me to focus on what really mattered, my own peace of mind. A few months later, I was at a cafe with a friend, chatting about life and new opportunities. As we sat there laughing, I realized something important. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not just from the family's chaos, but from all the expectations I'd placed on myself to make everything work. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And that was enough. As the months passed, I began to embrace my new reality. I focused more on my career, explored new hobbies, and spent quality time with the few people who truly valued me for who I was, not just for what I could do for them. I traveled more, met new people, and even started a few creative projects that had always been on my back burner. I felt like I was finally living life for myself, not for anyone else's approval. But then, one evening, out of the blue, I got another call. It was from Irene. "Hey, Jessica, I know we don't talk much these days," she began, her voice filled with an odd mix of hesitation and sincerity. "But I need to tell you something. It's about the family. Things have changed." I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in my chair. "What do you mean? Did they finally come to their senses?" "Not exactly," Irene replied, her tone softening. "But they're realizing the damage they've done. Mom's been talking about it a lot. She feels bad. She said she's sorry again, and she wants to make it right. Not just with you, but with everyone." I felt a small pang of guilt mixed with frustration. It had taken them this long to realize what had happened? Why now, when it was too late? "I appreciate that she's feeling guilty, but it doesn't change anything, Irene," I said quietly, my voice steady. "I've moved on. I'm not going to keep going in circles for their sake." "I get it. I really do," Irene said. "But I just wanted you to know they're trying. Maybe you don't have to forgive them right away, but they want to make amends. Mom said she's willing to come to you, even if it means talking to you on your terms." I thought about it for a while. It wasn't just about the money or the family reunion anymore. It was about respect. About realizing that I didn't need to carry everyone's burdens, that I could stand up for myself and still have a future with, or without, them. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I'm not going back to how it was before. I need to see real change, not just apologies." Irene sighed with relief. "I understand. But if you're open to it, I'd like to see you both in a better place. You and Mom, I mean. You've always been close." I miss that. A part of me missed it too. But I couldn't go back to the version of myself that always let them walk over me. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting in a cozy, dimly lit cafe, facing my mom. She was holding a cup of coffee, her hands trembling slightly as she stared down into it, unsure of how to start. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to make up for everything, Jessica," she said quietly. "But I need you to know that I see how wrong it was. I should have been there for you, not just expecting you to carry the weight of everyone else." I didn't say anything at first. I just took a deep breath, staring at my mom, and letting the silence hang in the air between us. It felt heavy, but also necessary. Finally, I spoke. "I've spent too many years taking care of everyone, making sure the family was okay. But I was always the last one to be taken care of. You might feel bad now, but this shouldn't have taken this long to happen." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I know. I'm sorry, Jessica. I really am. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know that I want to make it right. I want us to have a better relationship, one where we're there for each other, not just when it's convenient." I sat back, looking at her with a mixture of skepticism and hope. "I'm not going to pretend everything's okay just because you're sorry now. I need to see it in your actions, not just hear the words." "I understand," she said, her voice cracking. "And I'll show you. I promise. But if you don't want to come back to the family, I get it. I just want you to be happy." The conversation wasn't easy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like my mom was truly listening. I didn't know what the future would hold with her or the rest of the family, but at least this was a step in the right direction. That evening, as I walked back to my apartment, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was at peace. With the decisions I had made, with the person I had become. Sure, there was still a part of me that wanted the family to see the value in what I had done, to realize how much I had sacrificed. But I no longer needed their approval to feel worthy. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. I wasn't tied down by expectations or responsibilities I didn't choose. I was free to make my own choices, to live my own life, on my own terms, and that was enough. Over the next few months, I continued to build on the life I had reclaimed for myself. I immersed myself more deeply in the things that made me happy, my career, my hobbies, and exploring new places. I even began to think about long-term goals I'd put on hold for so long. It felt like every step forward was a small victory, a reminder that I didn't need anyone else's validation to feel whole. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and just when I thought things were finally settling down, I got another message. It was from Irene, asking if we could meet. I was skeptical at first. She had been a supportive voice in the family, but I had no idea where she was going with this. Still, I agreed. The coffee shop was quiet, the kind of place where the clink of the coffee cups felt soothing. I didn't want to overwhelm you, Irene began after we sat down. But I think it's time to tell you something important. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. Mom's been going through a lot lately, she said, her voice quieter now. She's been seeing a therapist. And she's been working through some things from the past that she never addressed. She told me she hasn't been the mom you needed her to be, and I think it's genuine this time. I leaned back in my chair, taking in what she said. It felt like a lot to process. My mom, the woman who had always been emotionally distant, was finally acknowledging her shortcomings. Was it too late for all this? Does she expect me to just forgive everything? I asked, my tone cautious. No, Irene replied quickly. She knows that's not how it works. But she wants to show you she's serious. And she's willing to make the effort. She's asking if you'd be willing to come to one more family event, not to fix everything in one day, but to start over. To show that there's room for healing. I didn't know what to say at first. The thought of going back to another family gathering, especially one after everything that had happened, felt overwhelming. But then I realized something important. I had changed. I didn't need to go back and pretend things were perfect. But I could go, not for them, but for me. To show that I was strong enough to face the past without being trapped by it. I'll think about it, I said slowly. But I'm not making any promises. It's going to take time, Irene. I know, she nodded. But just know she's trying. And she's really sorry. A week later, I found myself at a family event. It wasn't as grand as some of the previous gatherings, but the atmosphere felt different. My mom was there, but she kept her distance, not wanting to crowd me or make me feel obligated. I could see she was trying, and that was more than I could say for the past few years. I spent most of the evening talking to Irene and some other family members who hadn't been involved in the drama. The conversations were light and pleasant, and I found myself enjoying the night, even if it felt slightly out of place. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. It was the beginning of creating new memories without the weight of old ones hanging over us. As the evening wore on, my mom approached me. She didn't say much at first, just stood there, unsure of how to begin. But I could see the sincerity in her eyes. And that was all I needed. Jessica, she said softly, I know it's not enough, but I want you to know how much I appreciate you being here. I hope we can start something different, something better. I didn't know how to respond at first. Part of me wanted to tell her everything I had been feeling, the hurt, the disappointment, the years I had spent feeling invisible in this family. But I didn't want to open old wounds just yet. Thank you, I said quietly. This is a start. But it's going to take time. She nodded, and for the first time in years, there was a sense of understanding between us. We weren't the same as we had been before, but maybe that was a good thing. We could find a new way to relate to each other, one that didn't rely on expectations or obligations. As the night came to a close, I realized that I had done it. I had faced the family, not out of obligation, but because I was ready. I was ready to define my own boundaries, to accept that I didn't have to carry everyone's burdens to be loved or valued. The reunion wasn't perfect. It wasn't the happily ever after I once imagined, but it was real, and that was enough. In the end, the most important thing I learned through all of this was that healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. But I could see that with time and effort, maybe the family could heal too. And maybe, just maybe, I could be part of it again. Not as the person I once was, but as the person I had become, stronger, more independent, and more aware of my worth than ever before. As the months went by, things gradually began to change, but not in the way I had expected. The family, despite their efforts, remained a distant memory of what it used to be. I had learned to stand on my own, to value my independence, and, most importantly, to no longer feel obligated to carry everyone's weight. I still saw my mom occasionally, and we spoke more openly now. But our relationship was no longer defined by the roles we had once been forced into. It was a slow rebuilding process, one that would take years if it ever fully came to fruition. But I was okay with that. I had learned that family doesn't always come in the package you expect, and sometimes, the best relationships are the ones you choose for yourself. The healing wasn't immediate, and some of the old wounds would always be there, but I had finally learned to live for me. I had stopped searching for approval, stopped looking for validation from those who would never truly understand the extent of what I had done and sacrificed. Now, I lived for my own peace, and that, I realized, was more than enough.